Here, I'm the host of the More We Know podcast for the Gen Zs and Millennials. I know I say that. I say it's for the Gen Zs and Millennials. And yeah, although that is the focus, this podcast is really for anyone. But I look back at my time in college and I wish I had something like this. I wish I had a podcast where I could learn from mentors or experts in their industries or, fellow Gen Zs that are talking about real world topics, that are talking about what is a credit card APR, what is investing, what does all this mean?
Welcome to the More We Know podcast with your host and social media influencer, Mir. Gen Zs and Millennials.
What is going on, everybody? Here, I'm the host of the More We Know podcast for the Gen Zs and Millennials. I know I say that. I say it's for the Gen Zs and Millennials. And yeah, although that is the focus, this podcast is really for anyone. But I look back at my time in college and I wish I had something like this. I wish I had a podcast where I could learn from mentors or experts in their industries or, fellow Gen Zs that are talking about real world topics, that are talking about what is a credit card APR, what is investing, what does all this mean?
Welcome to the More We Know podcast with your host and social media influencer, Mir. Gen Zs and Millennials.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the More We Know podcast. I am your host, Mir, where we hope to bring you mentorship in your pocket in an hour or less, where we bring on experts from all around the world, like the mayor of Miami, the founder of Reebok, to help inspire and empower you. And today we have a phenomenal guest, a car legend, Brian Benstock, who's the general manager and vice president of Paragon Honda and Paragon Acura. Located just outside of New York City in Woodside, Queens, Paragon Honda and Paragon Acura are the number one certified Honda and Acura dealers in the world. Not in the States, in the world, delivering an average of 950 cars per month and 32 cars per day every single day. He began his career 35 years ago selling Hondas in May of 1982, but he's going to tell us a little bit more about that story. But that is a phenomenal, record to be able to say that. Brian, how are you today?
I'm great, Mir. Great to be here with you.
Thanks, Brian. It's a pleasure to have you on. This podcast, we have thousands and thousands of Gen Zs who tune in every month that might be in college or might be in high school looking to learn from the greatest. And you're clearly the greatest in your path here in the car world. But can you just fast forward us a little bit of background about your history, growing up before this whole car world, how you grew up, what your parents might have did?
So I love talking to this audience. I love talking to young people because I was a young man looking for what do I do now? I was 19, 20 years old when I started selling cars. And I ran into somebody that told me, hey, why don't you try selling cars? And I said, okay, I'll take that job until something better comes along. And that was, as you said, May of 1982. And man, nothing better has come along. But what I learned is that there are a lot of people in the business there. It was a business that people weren't necessarily attracted to. And so really the first lesson there is, all of this, find your passion. You'll never work a day in your life. Well, that's nice. But the reality is someone's got to pay the bills. And you can't always find your passion there. But I would say whatever you're going to do it really well. Go deep on that. And that becomes a passion. So I was selling cars till something better came along. And I looked and there were a couple of guys there selling cars and they were supporting families. And I'm living in my parents' basement apartment. I said, wait a second. If this guy can support a house and a mortgage and a car and families, if I don't have any of that stuff, I could do really well for myself. And I started to see the opportunity that was there for me if I paid attention to what was going on. And the reality was a lot of these car salespeople at the time, the industry was filled with people that looked like typical car salespeople. And I was a young kid. People seemed to like me. I seemed harmless to people, and I was. And so I was able to get along with people. And I found that I was able to do well starting out in that business.
That's amazing. And, when you started out, how old were you at the time when you started selling cars?
22.
22.
22. So I bumped along doing a couple other, jobs from here to there. And, I think it's not uncommon today for people to trying to find themselves, do a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And I think more now than ever, right? Young folk are confused by what they see on Instagram and TikTok, and everybody's a millionaire. Everybody's got this great lifestyle. That Dan Bilzerian's off skiing and doing this and that, and seems to have a great lifestyle. And we don't necessarily see the struggle that went behind that for a lot of people. And so I think your audience was appealing to me because these are young people that I think I can get inside their head a little bit and say, hey, forget about these high fashion positions and stuff that are really glamorous. Sometimes you just got to do with what you can with what you have right where you are right now. If you have a job and you're sweeping the floors, be the damn best guy at sweeping the floors, and you get paid an extra $1 or $2 an hour. Whistle while you do it. Maybe you get $2, $3 an hour, and you'll see that becomes a trait that you can have with you. And I'm not saying to stay in one position forever. I think America and entrepreneurship, America's a ladder. And wherever you go, get started on the ladder. It doesn't matter what rung you are on the ladder. You start out and just start climbing, so the minimum wage, don't look at that as, oh, I'm only making minimum. That's the starting point for your growth, your opportunity. And the great thing about the ladder that is America, you can climb as high as your ambition, your skill, your drive, and your ability to outwork other people will allow you to go. And I do believe that that's a great opportunity for a lot of young folks.
Yeah, and I love that you say that, because this is a challenging question that I have for you that our generation faces. Us Gen Zs, you're correct. We see the TikTok, we see the Instagram, Dan, people, everyone all of a sudden has a private jet. They have all this money in the world, and we face a little bit of a couple things. One, comparison, almost like we've developed a depression where it's like, I'm 21, I don't know what the heck I'm doing, and these people got all this lifestyle. How did you navigate that when you're 21, 22, selling cars, living at your parents? How did you have that mental toughness?
I don't know that I did. It's like anything else. It's like lifting a weight, right? You start out with a light weight and you progressively add resistance. I started out, I didn't know any better, right? I always had a good ability to work. So what I did is I took a job. I took a job, and I realized probably $6 an hour at the time. And I wanted to make a lot of money. And so I worked a lot of hours, but $6 an hour times a lot of hours, you can't get there. So I took 2 jobs, 3 jobs. And at one point I was working 3 jobs at a time and not sleeping very much. And sure, I had comparatively a lot of money, but it wasn't a lifestyle. Then I started to improve my skill sets. As I improved my skill sets, I could earn more at a particular job. And someone said, you should get into selling because you have the ability to generate as much money as you can selling. And someone says, if you're going to sell, you should sell automobiles. And I like cars, like most young guys, but I didn't particularly like selling cars, but I got myself in a good place, and I had a good mentor. And I would say that's really a key fact for a lot of young kids today, is to find a mentor, somebody that's actually done it. And don't necessarily look up to these heroes you see on Instagram trying to sell you stuff. And there's a lot of those quote unquote hucksters out there. And I think they've always been there, but more now than ever before. And they're serving you up stuff. And if you're interested in it, you click on it, well, they're going to serve you up more of the same stuff. And you're being distracted by so many things. So something else that I would recommend for people starting out is having a morning routine. Own the morning, own your life, and to really get up and get that day started, right? Get your day started with some reading, get your day started with some exercise, whether it's pushing some weights or it's jogging or it's walking or it's skiing or it's surfing, but get yourself going, get that body going, and those endorphins start to get released, and then go about your job, whatever that job is. If you don't have a job right now, your job is to get a job, and treat the job of getting a job like a full-time job. Hey, I'm going to put 40 hours a week into getting a job. Is there any doubt in your mind that a person that can read and write and walk, if they put 40 hours a week into looking for a job, couldn't find a job? Of course they could. And that job is not going to be the CEO of a company overnight. That job is going to be someplace where you start, but you learn the skill sets to start you on the way. And the best thing that can happen is you take a job that's an entry-level job that dissatisfies you. That it's supposed to, it's entry level. So then you say, I'm not happy here. And you climb and you climb and you climb and you search and you start like a buffet. You go down the buffet aisle and you try a little bit of everything. Then you gravitate towards what you like, or where you think you see an opportunity to do better. And that takes time. How much time? I don't know. How much time did it take you to walk? Some kids walked right away, and other kids fell down 1,000 times. But your parents never give up on you. The only time they gave up on you was when you learned how to walk. So it's the same thing here. You got to stick with it.
And that's what I love about, guys. If you're just tuning in, Brian's page on Instagram, you got to go follow him there. We'll include all his outlets. But every time I wake up and I see that I'm still in bed looking at his workouts on his stories, I know I got to get up and get to it, because he is a straight shooter like that, grinding and creating that routine. One thing you mentioned, Brian, is you had a mentor that helped you along that way
Sure.
within success. Were your parents also your mentors? How were your parents influenced?
For sure. I played hockey when I was a kid, 16, 17. 14, 15, 16, 17, up till I was 19 years old. I was playing junior A hockey, which is a pretty high level of hockey. I had a hockey coach that was tough as nails. You couldn't get away with what he did back then to me today. They have him arrested. And there's not a person on the team that wouldn't run through a brick wall for Norm Ryder. He pushed us, I mean, to the point where kids were throwing up. He'd hit you with a stick in the backside and tell you, skate, you son of a gun, skate, and chase you around the ice. And he was a big man. But he really pushed us. And I would say he started that work ethic in me. And then I started working at the hockey rink, and I was sharpening skates in a skate guard and refereeing hockey games. And, I was pretty much working 6 days a week from a very early stage in life. And then when I got into the car business, I met a woman, a wonderful woman named Nancy Phillips, and she was my general manager. And very rare for a woman to be in a position like that at that time. And she was an elegant, eloquent, very hardworking individual. I still talk to her to this day. She's brilliant and she's successful in many different verticals, still in the automobile business. So, I had somebody that set me on my path. And when she left that particular place to get her own business, the baton was handed to the owner of the corporation, Mr. Paul Singer. And Paul took over the mentorship of me, voluntarily or involuntarily, for the rest of his life. He passed away in 2006, and I worked for, I guess, about 17 years up until that time. And I still work with his wife and the family now, and in the same place. So, I could be accused by young people of being a tree hugger, but I found a really good tree to hang on to. And hopefully I made a good contribution to that tree.
Yeah, and it's clear that your career has shown us that. It's insane to get the ranking that you've gotten, being the number one certified dealer in the world, to sell as many cars as you do. The industry is extremely challenging, especially now. I'm curious because you have Vroom, you have Carvana, you have these other companies now. What was your secret sauce to becoming number one? What was the DNA or the tips that you can instill into us?
Well, I think the internet's a freaking miracle, and so I would take the natural talent that young folk have today about leveraging the internet, combine that with an ability to reach audience and/or sale, to be able to reach massive audiences, right? Not just with a TikTok video, but to reach those audience, people that are searching for things. There's nearly a one-to-one correlation between people that search for a car and people that buy a car. And there's a tremendous amount of people searching for cars, yet there's still in the infancy right now of people understanding how to reach those people that are searching. So I use tools like Google and YouTube to help, and Facebook, identify people that are looking for a car, and make sure that we're properly positioned in front of those people. Everybody can do the same thing. Every young person starting out today has an ability to reach greater audiences than ever before. And I think that's one of the things that is causing a lot of young guys and gals to try and, hey, how do I know I can reach audiences. How do I do it? And what do I sell them once I reach them? The great thing is today, a kid sitting in his basement can reach an audience in California, in Maine, and Florida, or across the planet if they have a good enough idea. It's just having the ability to understand, what is your product? What are your unique selling propositions? What problem are you solving for me? And if I take your product, how will my life be better? And the better you are at answering those questions, the more likely you are to be successful. But I would strongly recommend that people, anybody listening to this, would get involved in sales in some way, shape, or form. This notion that I'm going to be an entrepreneur, that's wonderful. If you're an entrepreneur, you're in sales. You're going to have to sell your second employee, right? Because you're the first employee. You're going to have to sell your second employee. Come with me. I've got this idea. Here's my vision. You're going to have to sell, potentially, if you get that vision moving, customers, right? You're also going to potentially have to sell investors, landlords, right? You want to lease a building. You're 20 years old. You've never leased anything. And you say, hey, I've got this great idea. I want to set up my corporation. And they say, oh, that's nice. Do you have any collateral? What's that? Do you have any credit? What's that? So, you're going to have to say, hey, but my idea is here. I'll give you 3 months rent in advance, or I'll do this, or I'll do that. It is selling your ideas, and your ability to believe in what you're doing, have an energy and a vision for what you're doing, and then convince others of that is all part of the game.
I think I'm just so glad that you brought up the sales aspect of it, because there's almost a tabooness to the sales culture, right? So I'm 20, I just turned 24, and I'm in the hedge fund sales. I'm in the
Okay.
fintech space, and growing up, this is another reason I speak about on the podcast. I was like, why can't I be in the front office? Like, I want to be the generating alpha, the people picking the stocks, the people doing that. Why am I selling? But then I spoke to a high-ranking hedge fund manager. He said, "Do you think when we're picking these stocks, or we're still selling, we have
Of
to sell our
course.
hedge fund over this hedge fund?" So I love that you mentioned that, because people think that isn't life sales? Isn't this conversation a
Everything.
sale in a way?
You've been selling since you're an infant. You're 3 years old. You're in the supermarket. You're in the shopping cart. Mom's pushing you, and you see Cocoa Puffs on the shelf, and you say, and your mother says, "No, we're not going to get those." And you start, no, and you start, "Hey, I'm going to burn this place down. I want those Cocoa Puffs." And sure enough, the Cocoa Puffs get put in there. It's selling, right? It's convincing somebody of what you want or what they want. And the example you gave of the hedge fund is incredibly important. There's competition everywhere. And there was a clubhouse room the other day, and it asked the question, is selling a dirty word? And I of course jumped in there to listen to what was going on. And there was some young woman from California, and she started saying, "Well, I'm an entrepreneur, but I don't believe in selling." I said, "Well, then you must not be a very good entrepreneur." And oh my God, I got, this 24-year-old lady, a young lady, was coming at me pretty strong, saying that the way you do things, you sound like a used car salesman. As a matter of fact, I am. I'm pretty good, and you can learn a few things from it, because the basics of selling are not going to ever go away. And the most important sale you're going to make is the sale you make to yourself. You've got to be convinced on you. How can you convince me on your idea, your products, if you're not sold on you? And when I was telling her these things about, she said, "Well, I'm an entrepreneur. I work from home." That's great. You're unemployed. I get it. And she was just not happy with where I was going at. And she was telling me about all the new ways and the young ways and stuff like that. And I quickly looked her up, and she had 247 TikTok followers, and I've got a couple of thousand. So I'm like, well, she's not very good at reaching audience either.
Yeah.
She's going to struggle with 237 followers, even if everyone bought her product, whatever it was. And by the way, she never even told me what it was. So again, how are you in sales if you don't tell people what you do? People need to know what you do. Not just, especially if the people around you, closest to you, don't know what you're doing, you're in no danger of having a big audience know what you do.
Yeah, and I think I'm gonna have to go back and just listen to the part that you said there. The biggest sale you're gonna have to make is yourself. That quote is phenomenal.
The most important sale you make is the one you make to yourself. I like myself. I like myself. I tell myself that every morning. I like myself. I'm good. And if you don't, you can't have an emotion. You can't give an emotion you don't have. If you don't like yourself, you're not going to be likely to get people to like you. It starts here. And I'm not talking about having a big ego, but really understanding, hey, I believe in what I'm doing. And do what you believe. Don't do anything that goes against what you believe. If don't sell something you don't believe. And I worked for a hot moment at a Lincoln Mercury store. I'm a young, big, strong kid, and there's a sign on the car: "Quality is job one." And as I was closing the hood on the car, the weld snapped and the hood fell off, and I just started laughing. I mean, quality is job one. What? It was on like a Mercury Zephyr or something. And again, it's long before your time. And I just said, I can't do this. And someone said, "Hey, if you're going to sell cars, you should sell Hondas. Yeah, the quality is great." And I've been with Honda ever since.
Yeah, and on that point, you're the number one Honda certified dealer in the world, but I know that doesn't come without failures and rejections. Talk to us about how you deal with rejection.
Well, failure is a key ingredient in success. So somebody that's going along now and they want to get out in business, in the business world, they want to succeed. If they don't understand in advance that you're going to fail, they'll never succeed. It is an ingredient in success is failure. And, I believe in, there's a great book called Principles by Ray Dalio. And you talk about hedge fund, he's the ultimate in the history of the world. And you set a goal, and he said set an audacious goal. And if you set an audacious goal and you hit it, then it wasn't an audacious goal. Setting an audacious goal is something that's going to cause you to stretch, to have to reach. And in doing so, you're going to fail. You're going to have a setback, because if it was really such a great goal, you're going to have to become a different person. And at that failure point, when you fail, stop, break down what went wrong, and try a different approach. As you do, you'll get learnings. Once you get learnings, you'll start to get success. Once you start to get success, you'll get a victory. When you get a victory, you set another even more audacious goal, and you're on your your growth path. But I can tell you this: if I set a goal to lose a half a pound, I lost a half a pound. How audacious a goal is that? It's not. It's not at all. And so it's not going to give you the energy, the self confidence to propel yourself to go forward. But if I had to lose 25 pounds and I had to do it in 18 days, and that's a really difficult thing to do, but I did it in a healthy way. I exercised 2 times a day. I ate very restricted and limited diet, and I stuck it out every day, no cheat days. And I did that. That gives you learnings, understandings to go to set an even more audacious goal, or whether it's finance or whether it's career, anything like that. And I think that understanding can really help you move forward. Failure
Yeah.
is a part of success.
I love that. Failure, it comes with it. You can't say success without failure. You know, you talk about mental toughness. What type of mental toughness have you had to develop over your long career? Because I know you have the customers that come in, no, 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 rejection, cold calls, all that.
Well, and selling is a contact sport. The more you contact, the more success you're going to have. And failure is second nature to selling. You're going to maybe talk to 10 people to sell one car, and hopefully we're better than that. But you talk to a lot of people, and the more you're willing to subject yourself to that failure, the more success you're going to have. And I guess that's the same in sports, right? In sports, they say that you look at the home run leaders, they're always the strikeout leaders also, because they're going for it more than anybody else. And you've got to be willing to go for it. But I think today, kids are afraid of failure, and they try and stay in between specific lines here where they're not going to mess up. And there's no glory there. You're just guaranteed to be mediocre for the rest of your life. And somebody that says, I've never had a failure, I would submit to you that they've never actually gone for anything worthwhile in their life. And as far as failures in my life, I've failed many, many times. I had during Hurricane Sandy, I lost 938 cars in the flood. That was about $28 million worth of cars, and catastrophic failure that we had to overcome. And because of life's lessons, I was able to work with my partner to get out of it with our company. We've seen the chip manufacturers now shutting down chips, and ordinarily about this time of year, I have about 1,500 cars on the ground. I have about 35 cars on the ground,
Wow.
and we're really scrambling right now to do the business that we do. But we're doing just fine. When COVID hit, nobody was ready for what happened, and COVID hit us here in New York around middle of March in 2020. And I remember looking at my goal sheet. It was going to be the best year in the company's history. And March, I started looking at that and said, well, that's going to be a little challenge. And we were closed March, April, and part of May. And, isn't it funny when you write things down, how sometimes they happen? 2020 ended up being our best year ever. As we came out of that being closed, and there was some pent up demand, and people started shifting to personal use vehicles and transportation as being the second safest place to be beside your house. And that's continued into 2021. 2021 will be the most successful year in our history. So, it's really that stick-to-itiveness that you learn through failure. And my mentor, Paul Singer, said to me these words. He said, the seeds of success are often planted in the soil of failure. And I listened to that. And, at first I didn't, believe it, but then you realize the seeds of success are planted in the soil of failure. So for anybody that's struggling right now, realize this is your failure right now, and your seeds of success are there, because this is the time you start saying, hey, I'm uncomfortable here. I'm not comfortable. I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm living in mom's house, and I don't want to live here forever. And, I'm making money, but it's not enough to really live. And gosh, I see those guys driving that car. Gosh, I see these people flying that jet. How do I do that? And the process of asking the right questions and starting to take hopefully some action, because asking the questions is not enough by itself, but start taking some actions. That soil of failure starts to be fertile soil for your success. And conversely, the seeds of success or the seeds of failure are often planted in the soil of success. You have something happen, you do something, and you get $10,000, $15,000. And what do some men do? They go out and they buy a depreciating asset. They go out and they have a big night out with the boys. They go to Las Vegas or wherever, and they spend, disproportionate amounts of successful money, and they've started to undo the very success they just had. And so I always keep those dualities in mind. And there's a great poem by Rudyard Kipling. If you haven't read it, you should. And it's called If. And one of the key lines in If is, if you can recognize success and failure and see those two imposters for who they are. And it's one of the lines, and it's true. Success is often an imposter, and failure is also, because many of the times, like the flood, like other difficulties I've had in my life that I thought were horrific, ended up being the best thing that ever happened to me.
I love that. And it seems that you continue to relate that success and failure thing, because I feel like it sounds like you're so comfortable with success, but you're also so comfortable with failure. You welcome it.
Yeah. And gosh, it's easier to be comfortable with success. But I start like right around now. We've been in some very good times, and many of the people in our industry are experiencing record profits. And that's where my palms start to get sweaty. I start to get nervous, because I know that's the time when people are taking their eye off the ball. They're not looking at the different barbarians that are at the gate. You mentioned a couple of them, Vroom, Carvana, but you left one out. The real disruptor, Apple. Apple's going to make a car, man. And I sell Hondas and Acuras, but when Apple makes a car, I want one. I love what Apple does. They've got engineering down cold, manufacturing down cold, design. Is there anybody that designs stuff that's better than Apple? No, voice technology and Tim Cook. Imagine the job this guy has done. He took over for Steve Jobs. Imagine doing a better job than Jobs, but he has. He's a master. And so when the Apple car comes out, and I want to see it, I want to touch it, and that car is going to be surrounding you with apps and change the way our relationship with an automobile. And Tim Cook said it in 2015. He said the ultimate mobile device is a car. And man, that scared me. I said, I can't have a guy with that brain and those resources speaking that language. And there's a famous Forbes cover where it had a businessman with a Nokia phone, and it said, "Can anyone touch the unstoppable Nokia?" And isn't that amazing? Within 1 year's time, the iPhone came out, and in its first year surpassed Nokia sales. Think of the Apple Watch, which many people thought was a failure when it first came out. Well, they captured 14% of the global market for watches in their first year. 14%, and they considered that a failure. They now manufacture more Apple Watches in all of Switzerland, and all brands in Switzerland creating watches. So that's just the power of this incredible company. So when they come into the automobile space, it'll be great for cars. It'll be great for transportation. It'll be great for people, because they're going to show everybody a completely different way of doing things. And hopefully that'll cause incredible competition. Hopefully Honda and Acura will step up and have even better products than they have now to compete with this potential new client, this new Goliath, Apple.
Yeah, and the data that you brought there is very interesting. And we saw even with the Apple Watch, it wiped out Jawbone, that company, the fitness brand. Fitbit took a massive hit to it. Apple does this with every industry they come in.
Well, look what's in here. You got maps in here. You got cameras in here. I mean, more pictures are taken in a single day right now digitally than were taken in the entire history of film photography. Why? Because you've got users. Everyone's got one of these. I can take 50 or 20 or 1,000 or 1 million pictures today, and I don't have to worry about the development and all that hassle. And so can everybody else. And so they are. Yeah. So, it's likely that the Apple car is going to have all that baked in there. They're going to have all the apps in there. The car's going to talk to you. You're going to say, "Take me here." And as you're driving, "Hey, Apple, tell me what's on my schedule for today." And it's going to tell you, "Hey, Apple, cancel that appointment, make this appointment." The autonomous car, for those of us that have children, I could stick my kids in the autonomous car and say, "Drop off the kids at school. And by the way, I want video verification of their being there." And they video the kids getting dropped off at school and going into the building. And this is all coming, and it's fantastic. Again, for transportation, it's fantastic for how it's going to impact people. And for those that don't change, it's going to be disastrous, right? It's going to be like those taxi drivers that never adopted to Uber, right? The simple thing to be would be a taxi driver and say, "Hey, I can be my own owner operator. Let me do that." Instead, they fought and they fought and they fought, and they tried to legislate against Uber when it was clearly better for the consumer, right? We all knew that there were people of color that would try and hail a taxi and the taxi would just drive by them. And we've heard that story forever. Think about the relationship between the driver in New York City and the passenger in a New York City taxi. You had bulletproof glass separating the front from the back. That's not a real friendly experience. That's not, I trust you. I appreciate your business. That's, I don't trust you. I'm scared of you. Sit back there behind that cage. The air conditioning, of course, the vents, the cars weren't made to be taxis. So the air conditioning went up front and the driver got the air conditioning. You sat back there roasted, and you think of Uber and all that changed. I can pick the driver. I can pick the location. I can pick the car and never have to worry about someone not picking me up because of the color of my skin or the way I look or my hair. And so, as we can see these insights clearly as young folks, I would ask that you recognize those trends and see what is it that people want today. And the number one thing I think that people want today in whatever business they're doing is shared control of the process. I want shared control of the process. So I've got my phone and I order an Uber car and I pick the car and I pick the driver. I look, he or she's got good ratings, they're on time, and I make my selection. I've actually done most of the work. The driver just shows up. Think about Peloton, right? The phenomenon of Peloton. It's a bicycle, right? It's a bicycle, but I can
iPad on a bike, right?
I can pick the driver, the instructor. I can pick the genre of the music. I can pick the length of the class. I can pick the intensity of class. I can do it whenever I want. I get shared control of the process, rather than trying to fit into a spin class in a sweaty room with 30 other people. And if you're 10 minutes late, you get kicked out of the class. And it's really a great time to be alive.
You're touching on so many facts there. You're preaching straight facts. Innovation is key, right? Even us doing this podcast now, we can do it via Zoom, right? Back 10 years ago, we would have had to be in person to do this. So I guess if you could give us a quick business lesson here as an accomplished executive. We're speaking about innovation. We saw what Apple did to not just Nokia, but even BlackBerry. We see what, Uber did to taxis. We see what, deliveries, Uber Eats, DoorDash is doing to, Pizza Huts, right? It's you either have to partner with us or get out of the way now. So I guess, what do you do in your situation, Paragon, Honda Group, or Acura? What do you do when the dealer next door all of a sudden they're lowering their prices by 10%, or they're giving away cars, just whatever? How do you forecast? What do you do as a business leader to hedge yourself?
I don't worry about them. They have to worry about me. Okay. And let them chase me. So we started a pickup and delivery for service in 2017. You can talk to Google and say, hey, Google, talk to Paragon Honda. And using voice, you can book a service appointment completely frictionless. We'll pick up your car at night when you're done with it, service it overnight while you're sleeping, and put it back in your driveway before you wake up in the morning. And we've taken something that's like going to the dentist and made it easy for people. I think we're looking to take out the friction in every transaction we do, not to make it completely frictionless, but to have like, the more they're going to do business with you. We don't disrupt. Businesses don't disrupt. Customers disrupt, and they disrupt with their wallets, and they disrupt with their feet. And so all of a sudden Uber comes out. There was never an ad for Uber. Never. Now they are, because there's competition, but there was never an ad. It was word of mouth. You got on Uber, you got a car, you look like a big shot, the car pulls up, and you're there with your friends, they go, what's that? It's Uber. Oh, what's Uber? As I get this app, I can have a car come right to me whenever I want. What? How much is it? No, it's cheap, like a taxi. And your friend, well, and that's how it spread. I remember being in a business meeting in Chicago, and there's a line of dealers, millionaires, waiting for taxis. And a buddy of mine says, no, I got a car. It's an Uber. What's that? And an SUV pulls up, and we go. And when we leave, he just walks out and he walks away. And I'm going, my God, my friend is cheap. He didn't even give the guy a tip. I reach into my pocket and I give the guy a tip. He goes, you don't need to tip. It's Uber. I go, no, you got to tip the guy. And later I found out I didn't know. And so that's how that spread, right? And that the disruption came from me, the consumer, that said, wow, this is a better way, right? It's a better way. And so we as innovators and leaders need to be looking for a better way, because our customers always are. They're always looking for what's best for them. And they're going to go, and the money's going to flow where it's best for the customers, always.
Yeah. And, speaking of money, is it more challenging now as a car dealer? Because I can come into your store now, all of a sudden I have Edmunds, I have Car Guru, I look at what's fair value, mid value, whatever. Does that
No,
impact?
no, no, no. I think the more information you have, the easier it is to do business actually, because you are not opposed to me making a profit. You're not opposed to me making a reasonable profit, and so long as we understand that, I love a transparent market, and a transparent market is where the seller and the buyer have the same information. Then we can make a decision together. You know what I've got, and I know what I've got, and it's instead of having a shell game where you can't see, hey, how much profit would you let somebody make on a car? 5%, 6%? It's reasonable, and I'm okay with that. I don't expect to buy something below what somebody else owns it for in life. I don't expect if I'm going to buy a bottle of water and it costs 70 cents, I don't expect to buy it for 50 cents. And the only way I'm going to buy a 70-cent bottle of water for 50 cents is there's something wrong with that water. And I don't want that. So, it's the transparency today that I think opens up the markets, right? The easier you make it for people to do business, the more business you're going to do. And think about going to the supermarket, right? You go into the supermarket, what do? You get a shopping cart. What do? You walk through the aisles, one aisle at a time. You load up the shopping cart. Then you go to checkout. What do? You unload the shopping cart. Then what do? You pay. Then what do? You reload the shopping cart. Then what do? You go out to the car. Then what do? You unload the shopping cart. Then what do? You drive home. Then what do? You unload the shopping cart. Hey, how about we just have the stuff brought to my house and cut out all that nonsense? And by the way, you and I pretty much order the same thing at a very similar cadence, right? If you every 6 days you order, you drink milk, you drink Rice Krispies or Special K, you get eggs, and for the most part, we can just hit repeat the order, and we can manage the differences, right? The variances there. We don't have to reinvent. So the first time you order the full shopping for a household, it's brain damage. The next time you do it, it's less brain damage. The next time it's easy. And then you say, I want to pick out the vegetables myself. So you stop in, you pick up vegetables and you go. We've made it really easy for people. I think that example is analogous in every walk of life for us, that we can make it easy for people to do business, and they'll gladly pay whatever that difference is for the shipping or bringing it to their house, because it just makes life so much more convenient for them.
Yeah, and I think just, in this conversation we've had for the last 30, 40 minutes here, I can tell the type of culture the company has there. And I know culture is a big thing for you guys too, but it comes down to, it seems, the customers deciding. Now, I love what you said there. It's not the business. The customer decides what's next for the business.
A lot of people spend a lot of time trying to disrupt things, and they come out with something, and the market just says, yes, so what? And that's it. And so as much as you think you're innovating, you did this and you did that, does it resonate in the marketplace? And many times they don't. But when you start looking at how can I make it easier for people to do business with me, I think you're onto something when you go in that direction.
Yeah, and it's interesting, even how I found you for this podcast, right? If I probably do a survey of all the executives of all the car dealers in the States, I don't know how many I could quantify that are on TikTok, right? TikTok statistic just came out this morning, 1 billion users a month on TikTok, active users.
It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. And 1 billion, they're people, right? And there's an algorithm, and you can reach the people that you want to reach on TikTok. I'm not necessarily looking for the person that's dancing in the hula there on TikTok, but I've already started, and I'm very new to the platform, but I've already started getting a little bit of a following, a little bit of a people that are resonating with me and that I'm resonating with. And isn't that great for me? And isn't that great for users? It cuts out the clutter that's there, and it's just another platform. There's never been a better time in the history of planet Earth to be a consumer than there is right now, or a retailer. It's just
Yeah.
understanding that the dynamics have changed, and how they've changed, and learning how to adapt to take advantage of those changes.
Yeah, amen to that. And this you've given us a full masterclass here on just business, entrepreneurship, sales here. As we go into sort of the closing side of the interview, I'd love to ask you, because you're a straight shooter, you've been very transparent with us. As a Gen Z, a lot of us want to buy a car today. What tips or tricks can you give us to buy a car? One, and two, on the other side, what red flags should we look for from car dealers? Hidden prices or things of that nature?
Well, you want transparency. You want to make sure that what you see is what you get. I think you want to do business with a franchise dealer, whether you're buying a new car or a used car. Franchise dealer has something to lose, as opposed to somebody that may be an independent. Our franchise is worth a lot of money, and so having a deceptive business practice puts the whole franchise at risk. So I think you're safe there. I think you want to be able to do your research. Used to be that people would go to 5 to 6 dealerships before they bought a car and never quite knew if they were getting a good deal. Today, with your thumb, you can scroll through and see if you're getting a good deal. Certainly make use of surveys, reviews to be able to see what the feedback is on the dealership, and to be able to pick in that dealership which salesman or woman is doing a good job. Decide if you want to go to the dealership or have the dealership come to you. More now than ever, dealerships will bring a car to you for test drive or for review. You want to buy from somebody that makes it risk-free. If you made a mistake, what is your right of rescission? Can you undo the transaction? And up until what point can you undo the transaction? Because mistakes happen. The biggest fear of the consumer is they don't want to make a mistake. So we've got to make sure that we do risk-free business, and you want to look at the whole transaction. Maybe you got a great price on the car, but the financing wasn't good. Or maybe you got a great price on the car and the financing, but the insurance is too high. You want to make sure you take a look at all those factors. And remember, transportation now is freedom. Mobility equals freedom. And I think it's really, I heard in the pre-pandemic days, a lot of the millennials, oh, I don't want a car. I don't want to own a car. And I said, gosh, you don't want freedom. You want the ability to go wherever you want, whenever you want. And again, for those of us in New York, mobility is kind of easy. You got subway, you got bus, you got Uber. But in other markets, a car is essential.
Yeah, no, 100%. And what about, what age would you say or income you got to be at if you're 21, 22? Where should you be at when you want to buy a car? I know it depends on the price of the car, but where do you think you should be at?
Don't associate your personality with what you drive. Separate the two. And I think a lot of young people go out and they get themselves a car without that they really can't afford. And yes, they can afford the monthly payments, but on a lease, but they don't own the car. I think get basic transportation. Get a pre-owned car initially. If you're under 25, odds are you're gonna have an accident or two. I hate to say that, but that's statistically still valid. So get yourself a lot of metal around you. Get yourself a pre-owned car. Find something with a little bit of mileage on it. Chances are, if you drive it for a year or so, you can sell it, get a lot of your money back, and then get something else. They say a car should be a very small percentage of your net worth. If you're a young man or woman, you have no net worth. And so if you go out and you get a $20,000 car, man, you're starting out in the hole. If you can get a decent, reliable car, maybe you've got mom or dad's hand-me-down or something, nothing wrong with that to get started out. Think of yourself as a rocket ship, right? And it takes all this energy to break through the Earth's gravity, right? And so you don't want to weigh yourself down as you're working on the initial stages of getting yourself on your success journey. Once you get to a certain point of success, it takes much less energy to propel you. But the more stuff you start bogging yourself down with early on in life, the more difficult it is for you to get to your ultimate destination.
Yeah, I love that. It's 100% true. I appreciate that there. And if you could go back and Brian Benstock can tell his 21-year-old self anything after being the accomplished executive you are now, what would you tell yourself?
A couple of things. You start a little bit earlier in my savings. And I'm a pretty good saver, and I did buy real estate early in life. But I have this account that I started out with putting 10% of every dollar I earn in that account, and then as I made a little bit more, is incredibly substantial today. And so start when the numbers are small, guys. I would tell young people in the young version of me, every dollar you make, put 10% aside. And if you do that, by the time you're my age, regardless of your income, you'll be rich. But it's not glorious, but it's get rich guaranteed. And as you start to earn more money and you've learned the discipline of saving a dollar, then instead of 10%, make it 15%. Instead of 15, make it 20%. And you'll see how quickly over a lifetime that money increases. And when you do get a little nest egg of that money put aside, you don't touch it. Learn how to invest it better so it's working for you while you're working. And again, you may have a business that you're going to invest in. You may have other opportunities to get rich. Keep that aside. Keep that nest egg aside. And I think that'll serve you really, really well in life. Whether you're a man, woman, black, white, Jew, Gentile, Muslim, it doesn't matter. That'll serve you. I don't want your money. I'm not asking for you. I want you to have your money. And just starting out when the numbers are small, getting that basic discipline can really serve you well for a lifetime.
Amen to that, because you got to save early, young, and we have compound on our side. We can compound
You
interest
sure
back.
do. You sure do. I don't have that anymore. But I got a good sized snowball right now. Every time it turns, it picks
Yeah.
up a lot. But you've got time, and that's even more important than the size of the snowball.
Yeah, no, amen to that. And I hope people are listening there, especially the audience that we have on this, especially from an accomplished executive like yourself. Now, any any final thoughts for the Gen Zs here of any closing thoughts that you can give them, words of inspiration or even fear that whatever it may be.
Gen Z is in the most, they've got the best environment in business ever to do business. You've got this internet platform that enables you to reach audiences like never before. But there are also a lot of distractions, and stay focused on what you're doing. Clarity. What is it that you want? Once you answer that question, spend the rest of your life going after that answer. What is it that you want? And if you're focused like that, like a heat-seeking missile, you'll get there. Don't waste your youth. I'm 60 now. I was the youngest guy selling cars just a snap of the fingers ago, and now I'm 60. So you don't have time to waste, and nobody's going to listen to that lesson. But I can tell you this: you don't have time to waste. I see people waking up at 12 o'clock in the afternoon, and I say, man, I've got a whole day done by 12 o'clock. You'll never catch me. So get that discipline under your belt also. There's a great book I'd recommend. It's called the 5 a.m. Club. And if a young person wants to get an advantage over himself or herself or the rest of the competition that's out there, read that book, the 5 a.m. Club.
5 a.m. Club. All right, Brian, that's phenomenal insight there. We have to control our days. We got to control our lives, because time is one thing we'll never get back. We can lose money. You lost 28 million in inventory at some point. We can't get our time back.
Not a moment of it. No, that's true.
And so, Brian, where can people find you on social media? If they love this episode, I'm going to put everything in the links, but where can we stay connected with you outside of here?
At BrianBenstock.com. I've got a website and numerous places to contact me there. And I love talking with young people. I mean, it's if I have a legacy, I want to be able to say I made an impact on somebody's life. That's always a good feeling. I know people have made a big impact on my life, and I want to give that gift back.
And look, even just interviewing here for the last hour here, you've made an impact on my life, just the things that I've listened. So I thank you so much for your time. And thank you for just the gems that you've provided and everything you do every day, Brian. It means a lot.
Thank you very much. I appreciate being here.